Bum bum.
Dun dun.
Bum bum. Bum bum. Bum bum.
Dun dun.
So The Thing is the greatest horror movie ever made. So we open up on some Norwegians getting revenge on the duck hunt dog. But it turns out aiming out the side of a moving chopper is about as easy as playing Duck Hunt, so. We then cut to Kurt Russell playing Cyberpunk 2077. And when the game bugs out and crashes for the upteenth time, he gives it the Cyberpunk 2077 treatment. Yeah, I don't need this. I was the dad from Sky High. And now, for the stupidest horror movie death that's ever been put to film.
Suicide.
I think this clip speaks for itself. Peace negotiations then go sour when Cyclops from X-Men accidentally shoots Bennings in the leg. Unfortunately, Eyebrows here is the only good shot in this movie. Which would be great, except this is the only time he gets to use his gun. It's a shame Knowles and his rollerblades couldn't come back in some way for the big climax at the end of the movie.
Maybe we're at war with Norway.
Unfortunately, it seems like everybody's suffering through a bit of COVID fever at the moment.
How long have they been stationed there?
It says here only 8 weeks.
Well, that's not long enough for guys to go bunkers.
Bullshit, Buana. 5 minutes is enough to put a man over down here.
Now that I think about it, this film is the ultimate fuck anti-maskers message that could possibly be sent today. Anyway, MacReady and Doc decide to go check out the nearest base, because it's the only place they could have possibly come from. I also love the running gag that Mac refuses to learn what a Norwegian is.
You really want to save those crazy Swedes, huh?
Norwegians. Hey, Sweden! Not Swedish, Mac, the Norwegian.
I know, but I refuse to acknowledge their national sovereignty. Viva la Sweden. Well, the dog watches ominously in the background. This dog's not stupid. He knows Kurt Russell is the biggest threat to him in this movie. Unfortunately, since the base is Kurt Russell-less at the moment, it leaves everyone in it nigh defenseless. Then we find out Bennings isn't a fan of Stevie Wonder.
Knowles, will you turn that crap down? I'm trying to get some sleep. I was shot today.
Doesn't like Stevie Wonder. You know, I'm glad he got shot. The song is not only a jammin' tune for the soundtrack, but it actually provides some pretty good foreshadowing as to the paranoid and almost superstitious state of mind everyone finds themselves in by the end. I'm not gonna regret saying that the dog is the best actor in this movie. Like, the way he twitches his head and just pauses and freezes at random points, it's great. Anyway, the dog uses this opportunity to infect Palmer, because who else would have this glorious 80s pro? Apparently the stunt coordinator, because his silhouette is the one they used for this shot. It turns out the actor for Palmer's silhouette was too distinct, so they changed it. Meanwhile, back at the Norwegian camp, man, what an incredibly creepy set piece this is. You got blood everywhere, you got gas cans strewn about, the Kool-Aid Man's been making a cameo or two. Some people online have pointed out that the blood wouldn't be able to freeze that fast coming out of that guy's wrist, but you know what? I like it. Visually, it looks really creepy and it sets the mood, so I'll allow it. I love how absolutely tossed up this entire base is. Like, yeah, you could say the humans did it out of paranoia with each other, but it could have also been the Thing just as easily, and you just don't know. You just don't know. Not to get too off topic here, but this just brings to mind how pointless the prequel was. The entire purpose of showing the Norwegian camp, especially this early in the movie, is to foreshadow what will happen if MacReady and the others fail. It was never intended to be a standalone movie. It's creepier if you let your mind fill in the gaps of what happened here. Anyway, MacReady journeys to the back of the base and discovers something extremely important. Oh my god. There's only one logical explanation for this. It's Captain America. Then they discover the Norwegian team was making abstract art outside. Like, I'm serious, I cannot make out what the hell this thing is, and I love it.
Is that a man in there or something? Whatever it is, they burn it up in a hurry.
Man, it's a good thing they didn't make a prequel ruining the surprise here. Okay, I know the dog is supposed to be a mass murdering killer alien, but he's just so adorable. He's a good little mass murdering killer alien. Yes, he is.
We found this.
Jesus Christ.
I like the cool little effect of steam rising off the corpse, as if it's just recently been killed. Yes, this is what the inside of your lungs will look like after a day of smoking cigarettes. There's also the great effect of that thing being killed mid-scream, it looks like, because of course it had to be super painful. Why do you ask? They established pretty early on that they can't reach anybody by having Windows go into sleep mode.
You reach anybody yet?
Reach anybody? We're 1,000 miles from nowhere, man, and it's gonna get a hell of a lot worse before it gets any better.
Fucking Windows 98!
While Blair and Co. do an autopsy, and Wilford Brimley just dives right up in there. Like seriously, he's having the time of his life cutting all these organs out.
Well, what we got here is what appears to be, anyway, a normal set of internal organs. Heart, lungs, kidneys, liver, intestines.
Wilford Brimley's like a kid at the playground, and his playground is organs. Later that night, Palmer and Windows get so bored they watch reruns of Deal or No Deal on VHS.
I don't know how this one ends.
Because Palmer is the kind of man that packs reruns of Deal or No Deal on VHS before taking a long trip to Antarctica. Nothing some wacky tobacco won't fix.
Clark, will you put this mutt with the others where he belongs?
And then the kennel scene. So you guys remember that one part in John Wick where the guy kills the dog and everybody gets real sad and it's super traumatizing and I can't go back and watch that part again because it left such an impact. Yeah, this is much worse than that. I love that this thing grows specifically spider legs, implying that it infected bugs at some point, which it could. It's very well within the realm of possibility. Fortunately though, MacReady notices something's amiss. This movie has the best lines ever, by the way.
I don't know what the hell's in there, but it's weird and pissed off, whatever it is.
Mac wants the flamethrower.
Mac wants the what?
That's what he said. Now move.
That's me after discovering a spider in my shower. So they lay into it with their firearms, but that doesn't do much but kill the dogs. Well, One Piece separates off from the dog thing to go scurry away for most of the movie. Fortunately though, Childs is there to rescue them with the flamer. It's a good thing Keith David has experience dealing with parasitic shape-shifting aliens that rely on body horror to intimidate their enemies.
Kill me or release me, parasite. But do not waste my time with talk.
Burn it!
Oh my god, it's a human eyeball. Only found its weak point. So they torch the inspiration for every Resident Evil game ever, while Blair dives balls deep into the autopsy. And I do mean balls deep. Like, this man was made for ripping out organs out of extraterrestrial life. Like, that is his favorite thing to do. For somebody who sounds so disgusted with what's going on right now, he is really getting in there.
You see, what we're talking about here is an organism that imitates other life forms, and it imitates them perfectly. When this thing attacked our dogs, it tried to digest them, and in the process shape its own cells to imitate them.
Eventually, he finally starts feeling a little bit queasy about what he's done, so he talks it over with Clark in the dog kennel.
Are you saying to me the dog wasn't put in the kennel until last night? How long were you alone with that dog?
I don't know, an hour.
Okay, I know we're supposed to assume here that Clark's infected because he was with the dog for about an hour and a half, but since it's proven he's human about 3/4 of the way through the movie anyway, why didn't he get infected? Like, I know that might have been a little bit too obvious, but it's another thing to throw at your enemies. Plus, it's established they don't really care about dicking each other over to survive, so it's not like you care about its well-being. Not sure what else to do about the situation. They decide to pour into those old tapes they found at the Norwegian base. So technically, The Thing is the greatest found footage movie ever made, and I will stand by that statement. So Mac and Co. get a lead about their big dig site and decide to go check it out, where they discover the Millennium Falcon.
Jesus, how long you figure this has been in the ice?
The backscatter effect's been bringing things up from way down around here for a long time. I'd say the ice it's buried in is 100,000 years old, at least.
They eventually discover the hole in the ice that the alien was carved out of, and I love how they never explain just how the alien ended up that far outside of its ship. You can kind of assume it crash landed into Earth and crawled out of desperation maybe, but they never explicitly say that's the case. Not really scary, but just adds another layer of ambiguity to the whole story. Unfortunately though, Keith David's having a hard time believing in aliens.
Thousands of years ago, it crashes, and this thing gets thrown out or crawls out, and it ends up freezing in the ice.
You believe any of this voodoo bullshit, Blair?
Charles, Chariots of the gods, man.
Ah, Chariots of the Gods, the Halo array.
Who has taught you these lies?
Don't know
One of you disrespectful men been tossing his dirty drawers in the kitchen trash can. But now I want my kitchen clean, alright?
Oh no, don't toss it on the pinball machine. Oh my god, that's disgusting. Okay, now I kinda hope Knowles gets shot. You ruined a perfect good pinball machine there. All these troubling developments leads Blair to seek out a different solution. In the form of those high-tech 80s computers. You know, those high-tech 80s computers that are somehow able to predict just how many hours it'll take for the thing to infect the entire Earth. My Google Maps can't tell Canada from Pizza Hut half the time. You're telling me this 80s machine can work out an accurate doomsday scenario? Unfortunately, this leads to Blair taking action into his own hands. Meanwhile, MacReady's apparently been inspecting someone's dirty underwear drawers, without washing his hands, I might add. Ew. Just a quick reminder, this movie was sponsored by J&B and Coors, and the movie really wants to remind you of that fact. Seriously, MacReady's drinking in literally every other frame of this movie. I mean, to be fair, what else are you gonna do in Antarctica if there's no women around? Unless you got that one deleted scene with you and the blow-up doll. But that's not important. What's important is everyone was probably jonesing for an alien invasion anyway, just to break up the monotony.
No TV and no beer make Homer something something.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
Unfortunately, Fred Fucks makes a troubling discovery.
I'm tired of talking figs. I just want to get up to my shack and get drunk.
Mac, it's important.
Well, you can get drunk down here, MacReady. It certainly hasn't stopped you this entire movie.
We gotta just burn these things.
Can't burn the find of the century. That's going to win somebody the Nobel Prize.
So looks like everything's all ready to go, but then... Oh, Jesus. Looks like Windows had a processing error right there. Meanwhile, back in the ski dozer...
There's something wrong with Blair. He's locked himself in his room and he won't answer the door. So I took one of his notebooks from the lab. It needs to be alone and in close proximity with the life form to be absorbed. The chameleon strikes in the dark.
So is Blair cracking up or what?
At MacReady, there is still cellular activity in these burned remains. They're not dead yet.
I love how understated his reaction is here. That is the face of a man who just realized shit's about to get very real. And real it does get, as Windows discovers somebody got hot sauce all over Benning's clothes. And to that, Creed from That 70s Show drops the keys and books the hell out of there.
It's Bennings.
Well, not quite Bennings, Windows, not quite.
Bennings was right there, Mac. I swear to God it had a hold of him.
So they chase Bennings out into the snow, and it turns out he could have been a really good black metal singer had he had the chance. Looks like this thing absorbed a Tyrannosaurus Rex at one point. Anyway, since the thing's main line of defense is to stand there and look menacing, it's dealt with about as quickly as most things in this movie.
There's one of those things out there, trying to imitate him, Gary.
MacReady, I know Bennings. I've known him for 10 years. He's my friend.
Shouldn't we have had this conversation before we burned him alive? So they torch the remains of Bennings and everything is looking hunky-dory until...
Blair?
Now I know Blair was trying to do the right thing here and keep the thing from getting out to civilization, but it's established later on that the thing can make spacecraft on its own, so it turns out this is pretty pointless. This could also be seen as the thing trying to make sure they can't leave. Maybe so it can hibernate before they get out and warn civilization of what can happen. I'm not saying that is the case, but I like that they leave it open. Unfortunately, it looks like the type 2 diabetes finally got to Blair.
Anybody interferes, I'll kill him! Just leave it here.
Hey, I made it about halfway through the summary without referencing Wilford Brimley's type 2 diabetes. I should get a medal for that. Anyway, it looks like Blair smashed up most of the equipment, killed the dogs, and put Windows in shutdown mode.
Fucking Windows 98!
Okay, Blair. Come on, man. You don't want to hurt anybody.
I'll kill you!
Okay, this movie has some really great comedic moments sometimes. You gotta add some comedy in there so the dark and depressing segments seem even more dark and depressing by comparison. You know what? I'm with Clark here. I'd be pretty upset about the situation too. So anyway, they decide to lock the dog murderer in the tool shed.
Why am I in here?
You run protection, Blair.
I love how MacReady drinks some of his whiskey here before leaving. It's probably the last whiskey Blair's gonna be getting for a while, and I just love that MacReady isn't above taking a sip out of it. Or 5.
I said watch Clark. And watch him close. Do you hear me?
I know that'd be too obvious, but again, why isn't he infected?
So how do we know who's human? If I was an imitation, a perfect imitation, how would you know if it was really me?
And Doc seems pretty confident he'll be able to come up with a blood test that'll prove who's alien and who's human.
I've been thinking about a blood serum test. We could take a sample of each person's blood. Could mix it with uncontaminated blood. I suppose if there's a reaction, we'd know who isn't human.
There's just one small catch to that.
Gary! Hey, you guys, come here! Somebody got to the blood.
What? Well, who's got access to it? I guess I'm the only one.
And I got the only key. I just give it to Copper whenever he needs it.
So after the world's best staring contest between Doc and Gary, Windows starts to freak out a little bit. I love the foreshadowing here that Windows can't entirely be trusted to take action, and will usually freeze at the first sign of danger. Also, check out this shot of everybody staring at Windows. Guess who you don't see with the rest of the group? God, I love this movie.
You guys gonna listen to Gary? You gonna let him give the orders? I mean, he could be one of those things!
So since morale is low and everybody's on edge, MacReady decides an uplifting speech is in order.
I know I'm human. And if you were all these things, then you'd just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
Well, that ought to calm him down. So MacReady picks out the 3 most likely subjects to be infected and has them all tied up and drugged. Unfortunately, they all end up not being the thing, but hey, it's a thought that counts. Now, a big reason for why I don't think Norris is a thing here is because they're letting him administer the shots, and he could have easily slipped something into that needle, especially because they go through the trouble of giving it a close-up right here. Anyway, MacReady sets up a potential plot device for if they ever want to finally get around to making that sequel.
Storm's been hitting us hard now for 48 hours. We still have nothing to go on. One other thing, I think it rips through your clothes when it takes you over. Nobody trusts anybody now. We're all very tired.
I feel like if they wanted to make a sequel, the best way they could do that is use these tapes. Just have somebody stumble on them or something. Somebody sends a research team out to investigate what happens, one of them gets infected by the thing, and you go from there.
You come up with anything yet?
1 or 2 ideas.
Was Fuchs about to throw acid on him? I swear to God, he's clutching onto this mysterious science fluid like he's gonna throw it at him. There is definitely acid in that beaker. Unfortunately, soon after this, the power goes out and Fuchs decides to investigate on his own. You know, like an idiot. Out there, he discovers a red herring for the audience. We then cut to an hour later where it looks like the thing really does not like Windows for some reason.
All right, we gotta find him. Palmer, you and Windows check the inside.
I ain't going with Windows. I ain't going with her. I'll go with Child.
Hey, fuck you, Palmer!
I mean, I get it, Windows updates can be particularly frustrating, but what's the thing's problem? And then go check on Blair, who is acting kind of strange.
I don't want to stay out here anymore. I want to come back inside. Funny things. I hear funny things out here. I'm not going to harm anybody, and there's nothing wrong with me. And if there was, I'm all better now.
Like, everybody's acting super nonchalant about this news. My thought when I first watched through this movie was Blair was obviously trying to kill himself and he got interrupted, but MacReady's non-reaction to it makes me think the news was already there. Which makes me think they locked the crazy volatile man in a shack by himself with nothing to do but drink and stare at a news for days on end. Bang up job there, guys. Unfortunately, Blair invested all of his skill points into intelligence rather than speech or charisma, so he's not fooling anybody.
I'm all right. I'm much better. You gotta let me come back inside.
Outside, they discover Fuchs, or what's left of him anyway.
Blair! Maybe he tried to burn it! Maybe he burned himself before it could get to him. We'll be in as soon as we can.
Where are we going?
Up to my shack.
What the hell for?
Because when I left yesterday, I turned the lights off.
So MacReady and Knowles go out to investigate the shack, where again we cut away to about an hour later.
Hey! All of you, come here!
Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Norris has the heart for a situation like this, but we'll come back to that later. Knowles comes back and shows everybody the red herring, which prompts the thing to once again try to throw Windows under the bus.
MacReady?
He's one of them.
When do you think it got to him?
You said guys were missing, and Windows, where were you?
Hey, Palmer, I took it.
Where were you?
I made sure I got ahead of him on the tow line on the way back. I cut him loose.
This was another part of the movie they could have easily shown, but I like how it adds ambiguity as to whether MacReady's actually infected or not. I mean, we know he's not because he's Kurt Russell, but, you know, It's there. If McCready was infected, it'd be really easy for him to just bury his drawers in the snow. You know, now that I mention it, it makes me wonder why the Thing even bothered tossing the underwear in the garbage in the first place. Unless that plot point in and of itself was a red herring. Just broke your mind, didn't it? Anyway, it looks like McCready finally made his way back through the blizzard, so they try peace negotiations.
Whatever the hell you are.
Kurt Russell responds to this by going full Snake Plissken.
Anyone messes with me and the whole camp goes.
You'd have done the same thing.
Unfortunately, it seems like Knowles and Norris have the jump on McCready. Fortunately, though, they're terrible at this.
It's cool, McCready. It's cool, man. Come on.
Yeah, man, just relax.
I love how the Thing is the funniest character in this movie. I'm getting strong pre-racist Kramer vibes here. It's the one thing you can say about the alien. He's not a racist. He'll assimilate everybody, regardless of race, color, or creed. Unfortunately, it seems like all this tension is too much for Norris, which makes me think he was slowly infected from the inside. Because why would the Thing, when replicating somebody, also replicate their heart issues? Unless it just didn't know that Norris happened to have a defective heart, which I doubt. I mean, the possibility's there, but I'm more likely to believe that Norris has been slowly getting infected from the inside this entire movie, and this is him just completing the final steps. So the doc tries some chest compressions to see if he can help Norris, but unfortunately there's only one way this shocking situation can end. And yes, the prosthetics for this thing still hold up. I especially love the added touch of there being human hair all over it. Like the 80s fro came with the transformation. So with the doc disarmed and the Norris Thing finally revealed, McCready decides it's burning time. Unfortunately, it seems like the Thing is just one step ahead of them. Okay, this thing has definitely encountered spiders at one point. On this planet or a different one. Maybe it made a pit stop on that spider planet from Mandalorian. Unfortunately, before it can skitter away...
You gotta be fucking kidding.
This gives McCready an idea.
Windows. You and Palmer, tie everybody down real tight.
What for?
For your health.
Come on, let's rush him. He's not gonna blow us all up.
Well, yeah, but he's still got a flamethrower. He'll singe your fabulous eyebrows off, you horned owl looking bitch. Then Snake Plissken tries to stare down the Arbiter, which is about as cool as it sounds.
Then I'll have to kill you, child.
Were it so easy.
Yep, that ought to do it. Thank you very much, Clark. So McCready decides to collect some blood from everybody, some giving a little more blood than others. I mean, Jesus, Windows, you don't have to stick it all the way in. Okay, it's like halfway into his thumb right there. As McCready hypothesizes that sticking a hot needle on the blood will cause it to have a reaction, seeing as the Things are just a bunch of selfish dicks, and again will try to preserve themselves at the cost of their supposed allies. That's right, friendship, that's the true message here. Actually, it might be. Anyway, this leads to one of the greatest scenes in any horror movie ever. Like, seriously, if you haven't watched this part yet, just go ahead and look it up on YouTube, because clearly you're not gonna watch the full movie by this point. Don't let me spoil it for you. This part's amazing. Legitimately. I mean it. Go watch it right now.
This is pure nonsense. Doesn't prove a thing.
I thought you'd feel that way, Gary. You were the only one that could have got to that blood. We'll do you last.
Last chance. This is your final warning. Okay, let's just go. So Palmer's face starts to turn into the Warheads logo, as all hell breaks loose. And you gotta give credit where credit's due. Every single person here is acting their ass off. Half of what's selling the chaos of this scene is everybody's reaction to the Thing. Also, I never noticed until I went ahead and edited this video, this is the most terrifying freeze frame in this movie. Have fun not getting sleep tonight. So of course the Thing makes a beeline straight for Windows. Unfortunately, Windows is having processing errors. You know what, I think Windows got it the worst in this movie. Fortunately, as soon as the expendable character dies, McCready's flamethrower finally kicks to life. So McCready deals with the situation in the most efficient way possible, by blowing little Thing chunks all over the base. Well, they can't possibly infect anybody anymore. Look at that, he's got Thing bits on his beard. Looks like all is well for the time being, or else it would be, except Windows is rebooting.
I'm not dead!
After that, everybody's on board with the blood test. This of course leads to another fantastic line.
I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, but when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!
So it looks like the rest of the crew is fine. So now they got all that ambiguity sorted out and it looks like they're not gonna have any more trouble, it's time to do the smart thing and split up again. Because suddenly they grow a conscience and realize they can't just leave Blair out there at the mercy of this thing. So Knowles, MacReady, and Gary go to check out the tool shed while Childs stays behind.
The door's open!
Well, he hasn't killed himself, so small miracles, right?
How'd he get out? The door was bolted from the outside.
So they journey down into the lair of Blair, where they discover a generic flying saucer, like the one you've seen in every Alien movie ever.
Blair's been busy out here all by himself.
Seriously, for such a unique and interesting looking alien design, they picked the most generic looking spacecraft possible, didn't they?
Where was he trying to go?
Any place but here.
We discover that Childs is gone and the door has been left mysteriously ajar. Well, Childs is dead. So Childs supposedly sees Blair out in the snow over here and then decides to journey out, which is out of character in and of itself. But then the power from the generator inside the base goes out a second later. Now there could have been two things with one hidden away for most of the movie, and maybe Childs went out to go chase after that one, but I also don't see him doing that. Especially since he was so gung-ho about leaving MacReady out to die. So with the generator blown and their options exhausted, they decide there's only one thing left to do.
He got back inside and blew the generator. He's got no way out of here. Just wants to go to sleep in the cold until the rescue team finds it. Whether we make it or not, we can't let the thing freeze again. Maybe we'll just warm things up a little around here.
We're not getting out of here alive. But neither's that thing.
And this right here is a huge part of why I love this movie. It is dark. Normally the goal of the protagonist would be to try to make it out of here alive by either sending out an emergency signal or trying to get the chopper repaired. Not in this movie. In this movie, they don't have any illusions about what's gonna happen to them. It adds a sense of hopelessness and desperation in the movie, while at the same time adding a sense of urgency to the story. Anyway, this is a horror movie, and this horror movie ends where all horror movies are supposed to end, in the basement. And it's here that they decide to go full on Scooby-Doo mode and split up.
Gary, Blanchard's in the old storage room. Knowles down by the generator.
Though in this case it's more understandable. Not only have they probably not slept in days at this point, but they don't expect to make it through this anyway, so their self-preservation is not at an all-time high. Couple that with the sheer desperation of their mission and the stakes involved, it makes complete sense that they would just journey off by themselves. Anyway, Gary walks down one corridor, and the thing you would exactly expect would happen happens. You know what? I take it back. Gary got the worst in this movie. I also like how ballsy the thing is getting at the end of the movie. Like, it knows there's just a few of them left at this point, and it really doesn't have to hide itself as much. Knowles thinks he sees something in the dark, so he goes out to investigate as well. They already showed what happened to Gary by doing the same thing, and, well, Knowles is a black guy in a horror movie, so when he disappears, they don't even really have to show what happened to him. We can probably guess from here. It's then that MacReady's assaulted by Bugs Bunny trying to make his way to Albuquerque. Fortunately, it seems like MacReady's been reading Elmer Fudd's playbook when it comes to dealing with wabbits, so he's more than prepared to deal with the final boss. And I have mixed feelings about this particular creature. On the one hand, I do like the idea of half of Blair's face being turned into just jaws, but it again begs the question, why doesn't the thing move at any point? All it seems to do here is reveal itself and then get blown up by MacReady. At least it gives us a chance for a decent one-liner.
Fuck you too!
Spiders, not even once. So it looks like all's well that ends well, as MacReady collapses to have one last drink, when suddenly...
You the only one who made it?
Where were you, Charles?
Thought I saw Blair. I went out after him. Got lost in the storm.
I know it seems like Childs is obviously lying here, and that's because he is, but there's also the fact that Childs could just as easily have burned MacReady with his flamethrower rather than warning him of his presence.
If you're worried about me...
If we've got any surprises for each other, I don't think we're in much shape to do anything about it. Why don't we just wait here for a little while, see what happens?
There's also that old theory that MacReady hands Childs a bottle of gasoline to test if he tasted it or not, which accounts for his smile at the end here, seeing as the thing wouldn't be able to tell the difference because it can't just replicate taste buds. I mean, it can replicate a heart attack, but not taste buds, I guess. But I think it could just as easily be that MacReady's infected and he just infected Childs with his thing cells, especially because we get a hint from Fuchs about that earlier in the film. Either way, whether MacReady or Childs is infected is not the point. The point is kind of the theme of this movie, that nobody can really trust each other. I mean, the two main characters who have been bitter rivals the entire movie don't just decide to put their differences aside for the greater good. They both just kind of give up at the end. They don't suddenly trust each other, they just don't have a choice but to be around each other, because everyone else is gone. Which is a pretty dire ending for a pretty dire movie.
Bum bum. Dun dun. Bum bum.
So the soundtrack is done by John Carpenter himself, who, as always, does a fantastic job. This movie honestly gets underrated in terms of its soundtrack, especially compared to some of John Carpenter's other work, like Halloween or The Fog. I really miss that 80s synth sound that I think It Follows brought back for a bit, but I really like to start seeing that in movies again. I don't think there's one triumphant or happy sounding track in this movie. This is part of John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, and apocalypse is the key word here. The soundtrack genuinely reminds me of the Warhammer Adeptus Mechanicus game. What with the loud synths and the pipe organs and all that? I don't know, maybe there was inspiration there. This movie does a very good job of making you feel paranoid and isolated. One aspect of that I enjoy is that the characters refer to each other by their last names.
Gary!
This not only makes it easier to keep track of the large cast, rather than if they were to have names like Bill or John, but it serves another purpose, making all the characters feel cut off from each other and isolated. Seriously, nobody calls each other by their first name in this movie. Not even Mac or Fuchs, who are shown to be the most personable with each other when the paranoia starts to spread. I really feel like these people hate each other even before the thing starts showing up and spreading paranoia. Like sure, they laugh and make jokes with each other at each other's expense like real coworkers would do. But picture you were locked in a cabin with all your favorite coworkers in the middle of a blizzard for months on end. You'd think about taking the torch to them even before aliens started showing up. I know I made a joke earlier that the dog was the best actor in the movie, and it is, but that's not to discredit any of the other actors. There's not one person on set that isn't giving it their all for this movie. When Windows acts terrified, you can tell he's terrified. When Blair loses his mind, you can tell the paranoia is starting to play on him. If you like horror movies, this movie's got a little bit of everything for everybody. If you like gross out makeup effects, it's got plenty of that. If you like well thought out and well timed jump scares, guess what? It's got that. Soundtrack, it's got that. A really underrated aspect of this movie is the dialogue. Seriously, most of the dialogue in this movie is memorable and brilliant, and yet you never feel it's unbelievable. I'm not really much of a cinematography guy either, but even I have to enjoy that. Almost every camera angle in this movie is shot from cramped corridors, just to give you a sense of what the characters are probably experiencing. They never quite give you all the answers in this movie, and that's fine. The answers aren't the point. The end destination isn't the point. The point is the journey, and all the friends we assimilated along the way. If there's a few things I did have to complain about though, it'd probably just be that the thing doesn't tend to move around, especially with some of the larger prosthetics. I know they probably didn't have the technology to get that going, and I'd rather them use practical effects than CGI, but there are too many instances of the thing in this movie showing up out of nowhere, jump scaring a guy, killing off one of the cast members, and then just standing there while the rest can incinerate him. The reason the Palmer thing is probably the scariest part of the movie is because he moves around so much. He starts having a seizure, he jumps up and sticks to the ceiling, he comes down and his head splits open. He gives Windows one of the worst ways to go in a horror movie, arguably. Another thing I wish they could have done, but I kinda understand that they didn't, was that they made MacReady too much of the main character. On the one hand, it would have been really cliche to have him be the thing at the end, but on the other hand, it's still a bit cliche to just have him be the main hero. I know we have to have somebody to relate to and root for these movies, but I think it would have been really interesting if we genuinely didn't know who was the thing. They kinda throw suspicion at him about 3/4 of the way through the movie with his underwear drawers, but that plot thread only lasts about 5 minutes and it doesn't end up going anywhere. The only way I could see a sequel to this movie working is if it were to take place under the ocean. I think it'd be really cool just to see all the aquatic creatures that the thing could assimilate. The bottom of the ocean's a scary place. Let's make it scarier. Anyway, that's my opinion on the thing. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Drop a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.